2 minutes ago, history shifted. In a stunning act that caught both palace insiders and global watchers off guard, King Charles reportedly slammed the doors shut, personally issuing an order that blocked Prince Harry's legal team from accessing royal documents. What was so dangerous within those archives? And why now, after months of silence? The tension in the corridors of Buckingham Palace could be cut with a knife. Phones went silent. Access was revoked. And for the first time in decades, even high-ranking courtiers found themselves frozen out of their usual channels. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The communication came not from the standard press office, but through a coded internal dispatch, a method typically reserved for matters of national security. It landed like a thunderclap on the desks of legal representatives and royal aides alike, signaling not just a refusal, but a defensive maneuver. King Charles's personal seal stamped the directive, bypassing the usual bureaucratic layers. This wasn't a delay tactic, it was a definitive wall. The contents of the documents in question remain cloaked in secrecy, but murmurs suggest they include a cache of correspondences from the late Princess Diana, as well as files related to the Crown's internal dealings post-Megxit. Some speculate these records contain details that could destabilize the monarchy's public image, perhaps even challenge historical narratives the royal family has fought to preserve. Within moments of the directive's issuance, multiple members of Harry's US-based legal team were reportedly denied entry to archival access points, including those operating remotely under the Royal Archives' Global Liaison Network. This was no ordinary bureaucratic interference, it was a complete system-wide lockdown, enforced across borders. British legal contacts, once cooperative, began pulling away. Emails were met with silence. Calls rang unanswered. What had shifted behind the scenes so drastically and so suddenly? The move sparked a wave of panic and confusion. Clarence House, already under pressure to manage the narrative surrounding Charles's reign, now found itself at the center of a growing firestorm. Insiders describe hushed tones, emergency briefings, and rushed private consultations held behind locked doors. Several staff members were discreetly reassigned. Others were told to stand by for further instructions, language not typically used unless the palace feared an imminent leak or legal escalation. Even senior officials, normally cool under pressure, appeared visibly shaken. It wasn't just about Harry. This move signaled something far deeper, a fear that the dam might break. Royal historians have long whispered about sealed documents that, if revealed, could implicate not only Charles, but other senior royals in controversial actions taken over the last few decades. These weren't just historical records, they were potential weapons. And King Charles had just taken extraordinary steps to make sure they stayed buried. Behind the scenes, whispers grew louder. Some claimed Queen Camilla had been in the room when the order was signed. Others swore Prince William had been summoned immediately after, sparking rumours of a heated confrontation behind palace walls. As the royal family scrambled to regain control, one thing became clear: whatever Prince Harry was after, it was powerful enough to shake the foundations of the monarchy. But what triggered this royal blockade? To answer that, we must go back to the moment Harry first demanded the truth behind sealed royal papers. Prince Harry's legal team didn't just ask politely, they launched a full-scale offensive. Backed by confidential legal filings and whispers of constitutional leverage, they made a demand no Windsor dared make before: full access to classified royal documents. What they sought was not just justice, it was legacy, identity, and power. The formal submission came swiftly and with surgical precision. According to insiders, it targeted a specific vault of correspondence, legal records, and sealed estate documents, some allegedly dating back to the final days of Princess Diana. The language used in the filing was not tentative. It was bold, specific, and unapologetically direct. There was no ambiguity. Harry wanted the truth, and he was prepared to burn bridges to get it. Deep within the palace's legal chambers, murmurs erupted. For decades, layers of royal protocol had shielded those documents from public scrutiny. Even senior family members had been kept in the dark. But now, an unprecedented legal motion challenged that silence. The request pointed not only to royal estate records tied to inheritance and property, but also to sensitive correspondences letters allegedly penned by Diana, never released, some never acknowledged. What could those papers reveal? Were they expressions of fear? Of betrayal? Or perhaps detailed notes about decisions made in the days leading up to her tragic end? The monarchy had prepared for protests, lawsuits, and media scandals, but never this. While Harry remained mostly silent in public, sources close to the Sussex circle indicated that Meghan Markle played a pivotal role behind the scenes. Some say she personally contacted members of the legal team, urging them to stay aggressive. Others whisper that she had access to her own set of documents, letters, journals, or even private recordings that reinforced Harry's case. Regardless of what was fact or rumour, the pressure was undeniable. A legal battle this size would not stay quiet. And the implications were staggering. For the first time, the monarchy was being challenged not through tabloids or televised interviews, but in courtrooms and legal forums that had the power to mandate disclosure. Fueling the legal team's confidence was their string of victories against British institutions that had once seemed impenetrable. From press regulation to security matters, they had defied expectations and won. Now, with international law on their side and growing public support, they were moving toward the one place no royal had dared go: into the protected records of the Crown itself. Royal aides were caught in a storm they hadn't anticipated. They had grown used to Harry's rebellion, but not like this. This wasn't an emotional outburst or a memoir, this was a structured, coordinated strike that treated the royal family like a legal adversary. Some inside the palace froze, unsure how to navigate the growing demand for transparency. Others whispered that granting access could risk unraveling a carefully preserved image the monarchy had spent years rebuilding. There were even quiet discussions about whether to initiate a countermeasure, something drastic, if necessary. But just as the wheels began turning, a powerful figure returned to the palace spotlight, one determined to bury the past once and for all. Behind the velvet curtains of the monarchy, Queen Camilla has wielded quiet power. But in this latest royal drama, her presence feels almost surgical. Sources claim she warned Charles that Harry's legal access could unearth more than dusty scrolls, it could destabilize everything she built. Camilla, never one to face the cameras when a whisper would suffice, had already moved several steps ahead before the public even caught a hint of the crisis. Insiders now confirm she held private sessions with senior royal legal advisors days before King Charles issued the order to block Harry's legal team. What was said behind those doors remains locked in secrecy, but one thing is certain: the Queen Consort wasn't reacting. She was orchestrating. For years, Camilla has been rebuilding her image, carefully threading herself into the royal fabric as a stabilizing presence. But to insiders, her rise has always carried a trace of calculation. And in these recent legal tremors, her silence was not passivity, it was strategy. One name keeps surfacing in whispers from palace corridors: the Camilla Clause. Allegedly, a confidential agreement tied to royal communications that could restrict disclosure of documents that would, as one aide put it, unfavorably reshape public sympathies. No one has confirmed its existence. Yet the fear of it being found by Harry's aggressive legal push may have been enough to spark Camilla's preemptive maneuvers. What makes this even more complex is the growing tension between Camilla and other senior royals who've taken opposing stances. Princess Anne and Prince William, while not openly defiant, are said to view Camilla's interventions as a dangerous overstep and attempt to turn legal policy into personal protection. Meanwhile, Princess Catherine remains the enigma, silent yet observant. Her neutrality is unsettling to Camilla's camp, who now question whether Catherine's quiet alignment with William might evolve into open resistance if the balance of power tips further. Camilla's fears extend far beyond the documents themselves. It's about what they represent. Some of Diana's final communications, long sealed, are rumored to name names those who contributed to her isolation, those who blocked her voice. If even fragments of those allegations were to surface, they wouldn't just haunt history, they would ignite new battles. Figures once protected by royal immunity could suddenly be cast under a spotlight they were never meant to face. Now speculation runs rampant that Camilla wasn't simply advising Charles, she was the architect of the blockade. Every legal hurdle, every closed door, every sudden shift in palace tone bears her fingerprint. Her concern isn't just for the monarchy, it's for the power structure she's quietly stabilized in her favor. If those documents fall into Harry's hands, they don't just open the past, they threaten to rewrite the future, especially for Camilla's role in it. But while Camilla maneuvered from the shadows, someone else closer to the crown was preparing to confront the king head-on. Prince William's patience snapped. Palace sources report an explosive confrontation behind closed doors, a moment where loyalty to the throne collided with loyalty to blood. For the first time in public memory, the heir dared to challenge his own father's edict. The tension had been simmering for weeks, but the moment Charles signed the royal order to block Harry's legal team, something broke in William. According to an aide present during the clash, voices were raised, and the conversation turned emotional fast. William, normally the embodiment of control, slammed the truth on the table. Silence no longer protected the crown, it poisoned it. He demanded transparency, not just for his brother, but for the legacy of their mother. For Diana, the wounds, he said, would never heal if they remained buried under red tape and royal fear. Charles, caught off guard by the depth of his son's fury, defended his decision as necessary for the monarchy's survival. But William wasn't swayed. He spoke of redemption, of public trust, and of the growing belief that the monarchy had more to hide than reveal. Behind his impassioned words was more than conviction, it was desperation. He had seen the fracture up close, felt the distance with his brother stretch wider by the day, and knew that this moment could be the last chance to close it. And yet, instead of progress, the palace descended deeper into conflict. Whispers now confirm that Princess Anne has aligned herself quietly but firmly with William's stance. In private, she's said to have told Charles that protecting the institution doesn't mean shielding it from consequence. Meanwhile, Catherine found herself walking a razor-thin line. While she urged calm behind the scenes, she never stepped in to stop William. Her silence, interpreted by Camilla's circle as disapproval, only added fuel to the fire. For years, Catherine played the diplomatic role, graceful, careful, neutral. But now, the queen-in-waiting was standing behind her husband, even as the monarchy began to bend under pressure. And then came the leak. A private message William sent to Harry, meant to remain confidential, was intercepted and reportedly shared among palace staff. The contents haven't been fully disclosed, but what's known is enough. William expressed sorrow, solidarity, and a willingness to testify if needed. That single act, revealed without consent, sent shockwaves across royal corridors. Courtiers were stunned. The fracture between father and son, long masked by ceremony and duty, was now visible for all to see. The heir had taken a stand not in opposition to the crown, but in defense of its soul. And Charles, who once believed his reign could bridge the past and future, now faced a rebellion from within. A rebellion wrapped not in violence, but in truth. Yet even as the royal family's unity cracked, investigators stumbled upon a sealed safe that could tilt the war in Harry's favor. Buried beneath layers of marble and silence lies a royal vault untouched for decades. Now, whispers from inside Windsor suggest someone accessed it right before Charles issued the block. What secrets lie within the sealed safe, and who had the keys? Hidden from the public, buried deep beneath the oldest wing of the castle, this vault is no ordinary archive. It is a relic of monarchy's past, guarded by steel, tradition, and fear. Only a handful of individuals are believed to possess access. Fewer still know what's actually stored inside. And yet, days before the official legal lockdown, a lone staffer was seen entering the restricted chamber under heavy escort. No one questioned the movement at the time, but in hindsight, it now appears to be the first move in a far larger game of royal secrecy. The vault's contents have long been the stuff of legend, but those legends are quickly morphing into dangerous reality. According to a former palace archivist who spoke on condition of anonymity, the sealed compartment contains highly sensitive documents that extend far beyond Prince Harry's legal request. Among them allegedly are final, unedited letters from Princess Diana never made public, abdication-era records linked to Edward VIII, and cryptic correspondences bearing King George's signature during Britain's wartime years. These aren't merely historical artifacts. They're potential landmines documents that could unravel tightly spun narratives and reopen old wounds with modern consequences. Legal experts warn that the vault's mere existence could complicate ongoing proceedings. If it's proven that the palace accessed or concealed documents related to the inquiry before the legal block was enforced, it could trigger constitutional scrutiny. Worse yet, it would lend credence to the argument that the Crown acted to suppress, not protect the truth. Precedents exist. History recalls the sealed letters of Queen Victoria, the classified files surrounding the Duke of Windsor's Nazi sympathies, and the Crown's use of sovereign immunity to bury uncomfortable truths. This isn't new, but this time, the stakes aren't just reputational, they're foundational. One document in particular is said to have caused panic. A letter reportedly marked with a blood-red crest, sealed in wax, and categorized under a succession file. If that document holds what insiders fear a royal declaration revising heir presumptions or casting legal doubt over key titles, then the very structure of the monarchy could be at risk. It would be more than scandal. It would be an earthquake. The kind that could redraw lines of power, rewrite ceremonial histories, and plunge the institution into its greatest crisis since the abdication. The timing of the vault's access and the subsequent lockdown is no coincidence. Someone wanted to make sure those secrets stayed buried. But every buried truth has a pulse, and now that pulse is racing toward exposure. As the vault's mystery deepens, another figure emerges from royal silence, an unlikely ally who holds the key to the next revelation. She's known as the no-nonsense royal, but this time, Princess Anne didn't stay neutral. In a secret meeting away from media eyes, she reportedly handed over a personal letter to King Charles, a letter that may have set off the events we're seeing today. For decades, Anne has been the monarchy's quiet enforcer, rigid in duty, unshaken by scandal, and committed to preserving the institution. But those close to her have always known she holds a private sense of justice, one shaped not by titles but by truth. And when it comes to Diana, that justice runs deep. The letter she delivered, according to two senior palace aides, wasn't merely a plea, it was a reckoning. Written in her own hand, it is said to have confronted past decisions that shaped the royal family's darkest chapters. Anne's message reportedly referenced not just Diana's treatment, but the decisions taken afterward to silence her legacy. There were lines, one insider claims, that directly challenged the palace's refusal to release certain documents after Diana's passing. That same source described the letter as unapologetically honest and devastatingly clear. The timing of its delivery just hours before Charles issued the legal blockade has ignited speculation that it was the final trigger, a deeply personal confrontation, not shouted in anger but penned in truth. It was Anne's way. And this time, she wasn't defending the system, she was calling it out. The reaction within the palace was seismic. Charles reportedly withdrew from 2 scheduled briefings after reading the letter, locking himself away with only his most trusted advisors. Meanwhile, Camilla was said to have been blindsided by Anne's move. One witness claims Camilla stormed out of a private meeting with Anne, visibly furious, declaring that the Princess Royal had crossed a line. The divide between them, always carefully managed, had now split open. Anne, it seems, had abandoned the code of silent complicity and stood firmly behind the call for truth. Her alignment with William and indirectly with Harry sent shockwaves through the family's internal order. What makes Anne's move even more extraordinary is her history. She's no rebel. She's a traditionalist who values duty above all. But in this instance, duty no longer meant blind obedience, it meant confronting a monarchy at risk of rotting from within. Her stance wasn't about taking sides in a family feud. It was about preserving the monarchy's soul through transparency, not secrecy. She understood what few others dared admit, that continued silence would cost the crown more than any truth ever could. Her decision to back Harry's right to access the documents didn't just surprise aides, it unsettled them. Anne's endorsement gave Harry's legal challenge a legitimacy it previously lacked. No longer was it just an estranged son demanding justice, it was the Princess Royal saying, "He deserves it." The equilibrium within the royal family had been irrevocably altered, and a once unshakable alliance between Camilla and Anne lay in ruins. But just as allies began to shift, one move from the king sent the entire monarchy spiraling into legal and constitutional chaos. Charles wasn't finished. In a breathtaking move, he activated a little-known emergency protocol reserved for monarchs under political siege. With one stroke, he not only blocked access, he fortified the crown from legal intrusion. But at what cost? Behind palace walls, the tension shifted from personal betrayal to institutional crisis. Known only to a select few constitutional historians and inner-circle legal advisors, the Royal Emergency Privilege Clause was an archaic instrument designed for moments of dire threat, foreign invasion, national collapse, or internal rebellion. It had never been used in the modern era. Until now. By invoking it, Charles effectively placed certain royal documents, correspondences, and estate records under sovereign lock, legally untouchable by any outside force, including courts. It was the monarchy's nuclear option, and the king had just pressed the button. Panic spread through the palace like wildfire. Advisors who once assured Charles that time would bury the conflict now scrambled to contain the explosion his decision ignited. Some feared public outrage, others feared legal retaliation. But what unified them was dread, because in choosing to shield the monarchy with such force, Charles may have just confirmed every suspicion the public held. Within hours, media outlets received gag orders barring commentary on specific case details, sparking a frenzy of speculation. Journalists leaked just enough to suggest something explosive was being hidden. The result? The story multiplied. What was meant to silence now screamed louder than ever. Meanwhile, legal scholars from across the Atlantic to Westminster erupted with concern. International experts condemned the move as dangerous, regressive, and a violation of modern democratic principles. The monarchy had long walked a tightrope between tradition and transparency, but this, they said, was a fall. A direct collision between royal immunity and legal accountability. Behind the scenes, palace lawyers worked around the clock, dissecting the risks of their own move. Could the clause hold? Was it airtight? Or had Charles, in his desperation, pierced the veil of plausible deniability? The palace's internal network was suddenly flooded with activity. Digital access points to archival records were frozen. Physical files were relocated. Even staff members with years of clearance found their roles suspended without explanation. Charles had closed the gates, but in doing so, he'd trapped himself inside a fortress of secrecy. And the price was becoming clear. Senior royals grew restless. Catherine reportedly questioned the optics of the move in a private meeting. William refused to publicly comment, but insiders say he left an emergency briefing early, his silence louder than any statement. Anne remained fixed in her position, disappointed, but unmoved. The family was no longer united behind the monarch, they were orbiting his decision, each silently calculating what came next. And yet, for all his power, Charles had overlooked one critical detail. The clause, as absolute as it seemed, didn't reach beyond Britain's legal borders. a loophole he couldn't close. Because while the king fortified his realm, someone else was already making moves from a place no royal protocol could control. Yet despite the king's forceful shield, there's one legal loophole even Charles couldn't close in time. Just when it seemed all doors were sealed, Harry played a move no one anticipated. His legal team, operating across borders, invoked US discovery laws that could force the truth into daylight from another continent. With the British Crown cloaked in emergency protections, Harry's legal counsel pivoted their strategy with stunning precision. Filing in a California court, they leveraged transatlantic legal provisions that allow for the subpoena of evidence housed abroad if it's relevant to an active American case. The implications? If the court granted the motion, British royal documents shielded at home could become fair game in a US court. It wasn't just clever, it was devastatingly effective. And for the first time, the palace realized they were no longer playing on their own turf. Behind this maneuver, many point to Meghan's legal acumen and her team's deep familiarity with American jurisdiction. Quietly, her connections within legal and media circles began to stir. Respected firms, many of them with strong reputations in First Amendment and public interest law, began signaling interest. They didn't just view this as a family feud. They saw it as a global precedent on transparency versus hereditary privilege. And they wanted in. Suddenly, what began as a royal standoff was now a legal wildfire threatening to jump continents. American networks picked up the story with renewed intensity. Analysts debated the constitutional grey zones. Legal scholars dissected the Crown's emergency clause and why it wouldn't hold across borders. The palace had fortified its gates, but it hadn't counted on the siege coming from across the Atlantic. As court dates loomed and filings surfaced online, the tide of public opinion began to turn. Commentators who once questioned Harry's motives now asked why the palace was so desperate to bury the past. Why seal the vault? Why invoke powers not used in generations? The Crown's silence, once seen as strength, was now seen as suspicion. Opinion polls showed a rise in public sympathy for Harry, not as a rebel, but as a son searching for truth. And in a quiet but undeniable shift, journalists and media lawyers began preparing challenges of their own. Freedom of information arguments were being drafted, transparency lawsuits were considered. The palace was no longer just dealing with a prince, they were up against the very concept of open justice. Behind the scenes, the UK government monitored the situation with increasing anxiety. While publicly distant, senior officials were briefed on potential diplomatic ripple effects. The fear wasn't just embarrassment, it was instability. If royal documents were exposed in foreign courts, it could challenge not only monarchy protocols but broader state interests. The palace remained tight-lipped, but for the first time, insiders admitted something dangerous. They were losing control. And just when the palace thought they'd seen it all, one last twist sent shockwaves through the entire monarchy. In a development that could alter the legacy of a generation, a long-lost addendum from Diana's personal writings has reportedly surfaced sealed in an envelope marked "For my sons." It wasn't just a mother's letter, it was a warning and a demand. The discovery came not through palace channels but from an unexpected source, a private investigator auditing a distant estate tied to one of Diana's former confidantes. Buried among old legal records and dusty correspondence, the envelope was found tucked into a ledger marked for destruction. But the handwriting, unmistakably Diana's, stopped everything cold. The investigator, realizing the magnitude of what he held, contacted legal authorities. What followed was a flurry of discreet verifications, hushed phone calls, and mounting royal panic. Preliminary forensic analysis confirmed the ink, the parchment, and the watermark all authentic. The seal, still intact, bore the personal crest Diana had used for her most private correspondence. But even before the contents were officially reviewed, whispers of what lay within began spreading like wildfire. Those who glimpsed even fragments of the letter spoke of names: Specific individuals allegedly singled out by Diana, figures she believed had betrayed her trust, silenced her voice, and manipulated her fate. The tone, sources claim, is not bitter but resolute. A mother writing not in fear, but with clarity, knowing her words might be her son's only compass through a storm she knew would come. The emotional weight of the letter is said to be overwhelming. In passages reportedly addressed directly to William and Harry, Diana pleads with them not to inherit a kingdom built on silence. She encourages them to question, to uncover, and above all, to protect each other. Her words, decades old yet heartbreakingly relevant, have already shaken those few within the palace who've been allowed to read them. For William, it marks a painful validation of suspicions long harbored but never confirmed. For Harry, it becomes the final piece in a puzzle he's chased across continents and courtrooms. For the world, it ignites a movement calls for full transparency surge, petitions flood Parliament, and Diana's voice, once quieted, now roars louder than ever. King Charles, caught between crown and conscience, is reportedly shattered. Close aides say he's withdrawn from public duties and remains in private consultations with spiritual advisors and legal counsel. His inner circle is divided, some urging disclosure to preserve dignity, others pushing suppression to protect legacy. But the tide is turning fast. The people remember Diana not as a royal figure, but as a woman wronged, and now her final letter threatens to flip the entire royal narrative on its head. As the monarchy braces for the fallout, one thing is clear: the truth can no longer be buried, and the war for royal legacy has only just begun. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.